Welcome to episode 56 of Shane Talks 99. It is December 21st, 1999, and we've just got one film to talk about today, and it's a really weird, Tuesday release. I've also got an episode tomorrow where I'm going to talk about two more movies that came out on Wednesday, before Christmas, which is acceptable and that's fine and understandable, but not entirely sure why Girl Interrupted decided it needed to be pushed up one more day to be a Tuesday release. I don't know if they were trying to stand out in any way or what was going on with that, but I don't know. I'm going to give some full disclosure here. I know for a fact that I did not watch this movie until 2000. I don't know why. I don't know what stopped me from watching it. I obviously wanted to watch this movie, and I'll get to that. But I know I watched it very early in January of 2000 because I can, for a fact, remember the day. Like, I was in my film studies class at IUPUI. I remember getting out of class. It was like at either 7 or 8 o'clock class. I got out around 9 o'clock or whatever. And I remember calling the movie recording line at Clearwater, finding out that we had like a 10 something show, and driving straight from IUPUI up to Clearwater, watching the movie that night, the last show of the night. Like, I remember for a fact, like, I remember all these details, and I know it had to be in January of 2000 because I didn't start that film studies class until January, like very early in January of 2000. But like, Jason took the class with me. I know exactly where the class was. I know who my film studies professor was that I took his class. He actually ended up being like a super cool dude that I hung out with outside of film studies class. We would get, meals together. We would talk movies. We talk film. He actually, Kevin ended up having a small part in Jason and I's first movie that we ever made, Consternate. Very little cameo in there that we threw him in there because he was just such a cool teacher that wanted to talk film with us. So like, I know I had left his class. I know I might have been the first class. I don't know, but I know it was very early in January that I watched this film in 2000. So um I digress. This is still a 1999 movie, but I just felt like I needed to be fully transparent that I didn't see the movie until 2000. So that's a lot of backstory. Full disclosure about this episode. This episode is going to be rough. I'm going to hit topic that's really gonna get me. I'm hoping I can just make it through. I apologize if I take some long pauses here and there. You'll understand when we get there. I mean, maybe you won't understand. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But um, small part about this episode is going to be rough for me to get through. So we'll get there. So where should I start when we talk about this movie? Let's talk about some things I love about this movie. We're talking about Girl Interrupted. There is a line in the Christmas episode of Ted Lasso that says, "To the family we're born with, and to the family we make along the way." If you know me, the family that you make along the way is like super important to me. Being an army brat, like, I was constantly moving around a lot. Like, in the course of, I want to say it was in the course of 8 years, I went to 10 different schools. So like, it was really like, it wasn't tough for me to make friends. Like, I made friends easily. Like, I'm a pretty personable person, kind of outgoing from time to time. But the thing was like, all these groups of friends that I was starting to make, like, those were people that all knew each other like since they were in first grade. And then like, I'm coming in years later, and like, I was always kind of just this extra person that was around and whatnot. So like, as we settled here in Indiana, and I got to make my movie theater family, and I got to make my spot family, and I've got my Bayern Munich family, and like, I've got the Miller family who have literally all just adopted me like their little lost puppy dog, for the holidays and stuff like that. Like, films that tell stories about groups of friends becoming a family is one of the most important, like, narrative storylines that anybody can do, that gets me. Like, even if it's a crap movie, like, I'll enjoy that part about bringing all these different, lifestyles and stuff together, for a common goal, for the love of a family. So like, that gets to me. That's a pretty big part of this movie. You've got all of these girls that are put into this mental institution, and the bonds that make them become a family. They might not get along. We have multiple emotional journeys that all these girls go on through the movie. Sometimes they hate each other, sometimes they like each other, sometimes they're yelling and screaming at each other, and then 10 seconds later they're hugging each other. Like, it's family, and friends who become family is something that's super important to me. Another thing about Girl Interrupted is it's told non-linear. If you've ever met me like more than once and we've talked about film, you know for a fact that I love movies that are told non-linear. Well, mean, not always. I have seen some bad nonlinear storytelling movies, but like as a narrative structure, that's what I love. And this film uses it really well. I mean, well, it uses it well for like the first half of the movie because there is a point in the movie that we hit where it just stops. Like I feel like Act One has a lot of flashbacks, and so like I guess maybe I need to rewatch the movie and see if I can pay better attention to when the flashbacks stop. Because a lot of the flashbacks in Act One have to do with, as she's, as the decision is being made to send her to the mental institution, the people that are talking to her trigger various flashbacks of hers that then create that nonlinear storytelling element where we see where her mind goes. There must, I mean, likely from a narrative standpoint, there has to be a point where, or like a reason that stops at a certain point in the movie. And I guess upon my viewing yesterday, I guess I just didn't pay good enough attention to figure that out. My brain just must not have caught that. So anyway, there is a good amount of nonlinear storytelling in the movie. I must have just missed that part that moves it into staying in the present. Um, Next, Susanna wants to be a writer. So let's just rope in Shane's Screenwriting 101. I've said this 1,000 times before about 1,000 other movies. You give me a main character that wants to be a screenwriter, and I'm hooked. That's it. I'm not going to say that I love the movie if that's the point, but if you give me a main character who's a writer and the struggles that that writer is going through, I'm invested. I'm in. And Susanna's a writer in this. Susanna is also a writer in real life who wrote the original book that this is based on. I hear they're not very much the same. I hear she got kind of upset with James Mangold for adding a bunch of stuff that she didn't like about the movie, but I've never read the book, so I can only judge the movie for how much I enjoy the movie. This film deals with some dark shit, like lots of really deep, dark shit. Deals with substance abuse, it deals with drugs and alcohol, and both of those things are stuff that like it's really close to home with me. It also deals with depression and suicide, also things that I have sadly had to deal with in my life and in the life of a lot of my friends. Which brings me to the tough part about this episode to talk about, but I feel it is important, and I want to pay homage and honor a friend of mine, an absolutely amazing friend whose name I'm not going to use her name, but she was a very, very special person to me. And some people who listen to this are going to know who I'm talking about, and that's all that's important because um, she was very close to me, or at least she was at a certain point in our lives. We went to high school together. My senior year of high school, her junior year of high school, we got very close. We had lunch together almost every day, and we just connected on like a mental level. It, it wasn't really a physical thing for the most part, but at an emotional and mental level, like we just got each other, and we had like some really great conversations. And like after high school, after our lives went separately, we ended up coming back together for a while, and it was at that point in life where we hit on like multiple different levels, and that mental connection that we still had was still there, and like we would just lay around and just talk about like really deep and emotional stuff. Like we would pick movies and break down movies together, or she would go deep into telling me about these. She was big into reading biographies, so she would tell me about all these famous painters or like artists or stuff like that, and like she would just tell me about like all the crazy stuff that they went through in their lives. She would talk to me about politics, which I don't talk about, but I would listen to her talk about politics and what she wanted to express. And like we'd put on music and listen to songs that we loved, and like we would just lay there and have all of these super deep emotional conversations. And the reason why all of this matters about this movie is there is a moment in the first act of Girl Interrupted where Winona Ryder's character is laying in bed with Jared Leto, and they're just talking. They just have this deep conversation about war and about life and about suicide and about just all these deep, deep conversations. And I mean, like in the movie, it's a very short period of time, but you would just imagine that they've been having these conversations. And so, like, when that scene hit this time, when I watched it, that scene hit way differently than it ever has in the entire time I've watched this movie. And I think it is due to the fact that I saw my friend in that Winona Ryder character for like at that moment. Before in the movie, before I got to that, I hadn't put that connection together, but something in watching that scene just triggered it. Um, and for the rest of the film, I saw my friend in this character, and it fit really well. Um, Despite the fact that we drifted apart, I will hold on to the memories that I have with her for forever. And I just the demons that are addressed in this film very much I wish she had been able to deal with in her own real and personal life because I don't get the chance to have those conversations with her anymore. And that's really disappointing. So, all right. That is all I wanted to say about the depressing shit that's involved in this movie. So, let's see. We have a non-linear storytelling aspect. We have a main character who wants to be a writer. We have a main character who is the embodiment of someone very special to me. And like just the mannerisms and the nuances, once I put that together, like as I was watching the rest of the movie, it all just reminded me of her. The way she would talk quietly at certain times, the way she would say words, like just it was all there, and it really changed my viewing of the movie this time. Like I said, I've really enjoyed this movie for years. I think the last time I watched it was maybe like 4 years ago. I think during COVID, I watched a bunch of 1999 movies when I wasn't working. It didn't hit me the same way that it did. I didn't make these connections, and it's probably for the fact that I do not have the ability to ever see this person again. So, yeah, that that is that. Um, let's let's try to talk about Girl Interrupted some more. Let's get back to the movie. I've already talked about Winona Ryder and Jared Leto, two very big names in this film, but there are more to come. Whoopi Goldberg is in this movie. Like, yes, I love getting to see Whoopi. She plays an authoritative figure, so it's kind of like a badass Whoopi. Brittany Murphy is in this film. Somebody who unfortunately in her real life had to deal with some demons as well. It sounds like 1999 was good for Brittany Murphy. She was in this movie that I really like, and she was in Drop Dead Gorgeous, which was hilarious. So Brittany Murphy, awesome. Clea Duvall is in this film, and this film is the first time I remember seeing her play a character that I didn't think was a bitch. Like she played Stokely in The Faculty, which I know technically a 1998 film, but still, I've argued this before. The Faculty was released on Christmas Day in 1998. It was still in theaters in 1999. By default, I consider it a holdover into 99 movie. But anyway, she was in The Faculty. She was a bitch. She was in She's All That this year. Also a bitch. Anything else? Well, okay, we can go back to 1998 again. She was in Can't Hardly Wait, and yep, she was a bitch in that movie too. So like for a good year and a half, all I thought was this girl can just play bitches, and then we got this movie, and I'm really happy because she really shines in this movie as she is just like sweet and innocent and just like charming. Like she has great screen presence, and like I had forgotten how good she was in this movie until I watched it this time. Elizabeth Moss is also in this film, who's had a good 1999. She was also in Mumford and Anywhere But Here. Joanna Kearns from Who's the Boss plays Susanna's mother in this movie. Vanessa Redgrave plays one of the doctors. Jeffrey Tambor plays one of the doctors in this movie. And I've given you a bunch of amazing names so far, but I have saved the best name for last. Oh boy, did I save the best name for last. 1999 began my huge crush on Angelina Jolie. Yes, I'd seen her in Hackers before, but like it didn't hit until 1999 because like earlier in 1999 she was in a movie called Pushing 10, kind of put her on my radar a little bit. And then man, by 2000 was I ever jealous of Billy Bob Thornton, being with her and whatnot. But like major crush vibes happened right here with Girl Interrupted. Like I mean, 6 months later, she would go on and she would do Gone in 60 Seconds, and like that just skyrocketed it to like the next level, like the blonde hair and the tattoos, and like yes, that was when the crush like accelerated. But like this was Pushing 10 was like, oh, that girl's really cute. This movie was like, oh, this girl's got attitude and spunk, and I like that. And like I said, and then it just keeps going from there. And then, like after her and Billy Bob get divorced, then she ends up marrying Brad Pitt. And like when that happened, I literally had the moment of like, who am I more jealous of? Am I more jealous that she's married to Brad Pitt or am I more jealous of Brad Pitt's married to her? Like, I really couldn't tell who I was more jealous of at that point. Like, that was a serious power couple right there. Unfortunately, it turned out the way it did. So, like, anyway, Angelina Jolie in Girl Interrupted is amazing. It is an absolutely top-notch performance, and I am not the only person who felt this way, as she did win the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for this film. And she straight up deserves it because the character she plays is amazing. She oozes with charisma and eats up every single scene that she's in. Her eyes, oh my God, her eyes, and then her body language just tells you, the viewer, exactly what you're getting from her. Yeah, she's crazy. She's brash, she's harsh, she's very rough around the edges, but those are all the things that make this character so compelling. It's like she walks into a room and you're literally like, what is going to happen? Like, what is she going to do? Like, any scene that she is in, you just know something crazy is going to happen and you're going to really enjoy it. So, like, I said it earlier, this movie deals with a lot of heavy shit. Other things that I haven't addressed: molestation, teachers having sexual encounters with students, self-harm and mutilation, schizophrenia, anorexia, isolation issues, like every negative stigma that was present around mental health therapy, like that's all out there about how terrible it is. And I mean, like, even more so for the fact that this movie is set in the 60s. Like, it hit a lot of disorders that were, still going on in the 90s and stuff like that. So while I do really enjoy this movie, like, the fact of the matter is there's quite a few slow parts. And there's honestly, with a running time of like 2 hours, you could probably easily cut like 20 minutes out of it and make the pacing a little better. At least in my opinion. I don't know. I don't really think it hurt the film being slow. But when I watched it yesterday, I found my brain really drifting a lot and having trouble staying involved in the movie. And I mean, I don't know. It might be some other stuff I've got going on in my life that is causing my head to not be able to focus and kind of drift off and wander places. But maybe that's not the fault of the film, but it definitely was happening at certain points in the film yesterday. So Girl Interrupted was directed by James Mangold, who overall is a director that I like. He has a lot of movies that I like, but he also does a lot of movies that I hate. So, like, right before this, he did a movie called Copland in 1997, Sylvester Stallone flick that I really enjoy. Film he directed after this was a movie called Kate and Leopold, which, I mean, I should like it. It's Hugh Jackman. It's time travel, but I literally hate that movie. I think it is so dumb. Not a fan. Then let's ride the roller coaster back up. In 2003, he directed a movie called Identity with John Cusack, and I think that movie's amazing. Like, this psychological thriller that like is just really well done. It's creepy. I honestly think Clea Duvall was in that movie also. Now that I think about it. But anyway, like, and I'm not going to keep going. His career goes up and down and up and down. He directed a couple of, Wolverine movies, which makes sense since they did Kate and Leopold together. But like, James Mangold, some good, some bad. Yeah, but overall, he's a director that I think can direct. I just don't always like what he directs. So, Girl Interrupted was an absolutely amazing film right as we were capping off 1999, despite the fact that I honestly didn't see it until 2000. So, it is what it is. But I'll be back tomorrow because I've got two more movies to talk about, the Wednesday releases before Christmas.